Hello and welcome to Diecast Diaries. I'm Dan, and in this first video of my channel we're going to be taking a look at the Corgi Juniors military range. Now, when I was trying to decide what sort of subject to do my first video on, which particular range, I was kind of reviewing my introduction video that I did, and I noticed that of all the different items that I'd got kind of set out and I kind of individually referred to, there was one that I completely missed out despite it being in the video, which was this Corgi Juniors military helicopter. So it seems only right to start with the Corgi Juniors military range. Now, Corgi introduced their Juniors range in 1970 as a follow-on from the earlier Husky lineup of sort of smaller sized diecast vehicles, I assume introduced to directly compete with Matchbox. Now, there were actually 3 military vehicles as part of the Husky range, but they were all just repaints of earlier civilian vehicles. First of which was this, the Citroen DS Army Ambulance. I will first of all point out apologies for the condition of this one. Not all of my models are in mint condition, but they are generally sort of okay and complete. So yeah, Citroen DS Army Ambulance. I find it highly unlikely any military will ever have used one of these, even the French Army. But, you know, you can't blame them for trying, and it's probably one of the slightly more appropriate vehicles that was in the Husky lineup. So that's that. No moving parts on it, by the way. Second one, another vehicle highly unlikely to have ever been used by any military. This is the Guy Warrior tanker. I think the original version of this was in an SO livery. Not only is it unlikely to have been used by the military, it's very unlikely to ever have been used by the US Army. This seems to have been a bit of a thing with Corgi, producing vehicles in a US Army livery. A load of their vehicles that they produced in their larger range in the sort of 1950s into the 60s, a lot of which again were kind of repainted civilian vehicles. All US Army generally, even the Land Rover. Don't know why. Corgi is a British company, but obviously thought that would make them sell better. Maybe they thought the White Star was particularly eye-catching. I don't know. Decently, fairly weighty model, plastic base again, and no moving parts. But yeah, not terribly convincing as a military vehicle. And then the last one, probably the best of the bunch, although unfortunately in my case it's the one that's in the worst condition, and it's the early model of the Ford Control Land Rover. Now, the Ford Control Land Rover was obviously a proper military vehicle, but these earlier versions, I'm not sure whether this one ever actually entered service. And again, Corgi have decided to stick a White Star on top of the cab. This one has been repainted slightly on the bumper. You can see it's a bit messy there. And the canopy, or the tilt rather, which would normally be removable, has been glued on in this case. So I do need to pick up a better condition one of these at some point. But yeah, so that's the last of the Husky range. Probably the best out of the 3, but yeah, overall not brilliant. So fast forward to 1974, and the first Corgi Juniors military vehicle was released, and that was this one, the Jeep. Now, no military series is complete without a Jeep, I think it's fair to say. Now this one is actually a redone version of an earlier Husky model, which is here. Let the camera catch up a bit. So you can see both exactly the same big, slightly oversized windscreen frame. Slightly different at the front. I don't know if that's supposed to be a winch or something on the military one. But you can see a little something in between the wheel arches. It's a shame, really, that they didn't include the original. They didn't carry on with the original wheels from the Husky one, because these are really nice. I know why. Obviously, it's because everything had to have speed wheels then to compete with Matchbox and Hot Wheels. So let's put that to one side. So yeah, nice simple Jeep. It's obviously a post-war Jeep, as evidenced by the larger size headlamps, the one-piece windscreen, and the rounded front corners of the wheel arches. And the also little tailgate at the back. But yeah, not a bad little Jeep. Obviously windscreen folds down, and it does at least include a nice driver figure. What's there? Next one, another recolour of a vehicle in their normal range, but again, not a bad choice, and this is the Land Rover Army Ambulance. So this was in the civilian range in just a normal kind of white ambulance livery. I think it was also included as part of a coastal rescue set. Not bad. The plastic top, I think, does come off. It's basically a Land Rover pickup underneath that. They just kind of put the plastic top on. It's okay. It's fairly basic, but you know, at least it is an appropriate military vehicle. At least it is one that was genuinely used by the British Army. So that's the Land Rover. It's actually Series 3 long wheelbase Land Rover ambulance. Again with whiz wheels, of course. The next one is the kind of the first proper military vehicle, and that's this one. It's the Daimler Dingo Scout car. Now, it's worth pointing out at this point that the Corgi Juniors military range is kind of a little bit all over the place in that you've got two post-war vehicles, and in the case of the Land Rover, one which would have been at the time current use, and then you're jumping back to World War II with the Daimler Dingo. They just call it the Daimler Scout car, but it is a Dingo. Nice for them to include the sort of Desert Rats, even though it's not in desert camouflage. It's got the Desert Rats logo with the Jerboa there, and the military serial number on the back. Nice figure of a soldier inside it with what looks like a Bren gun. Nice detail, I think, on the Dingo. You've got a couple of jerry cans on the back, and it's a fairly, although it's got a plastic base, it's a fairly chunky model. Now, what I didn't realise at the time, and this was because I got a couple as part of a mixed lot off eBay, there's actually a variant. There we go. So you can see, let's get the camera to catch up, there you go. So it's got the same number, but a totally different sticker, and this one's actually got a tow hitch. And that's because, well, something we'll come to in a little bit, was a field gun. Now, the Jeep can also tow the field gun, but so can this. So they obviously decided at some point to change the moulding of the Dingo, so it's got a tow hook, and obviously change the sticker to suit. So yeah, two totally different ones there. I think they are also a slightly different green. This one seems a sort of slightly lighter green, this one more of a military green. Both all right, really. So yeah, that's your Daimler Dingo. Put those two over there. Now, this next one is, I'm pretty sure, my favourite of the series. Another proper military vehicle, and an American vehicle. It's a Cadillac Gauge V100 Commando armoured car. Again, this would have been a current use military vehicle. It's one introduced in the Vietnam War for escorting convoys. A nicely done model, actually. I think the only thing that really spoils it is the black plastic turret. It's a shame they couldn't have done it in the same colour as the rest of the vehicle, but similar to the Dingo, it's got decent wheels. These are obviously standard wheels from the Corgi range, but they suit it really well. Some nice detail on it. It would have had the twin machine guns, which I think they're supposed to be like 50 calibers. But yeah, really nicely done model, that one. Definitely my favourite of the series, and an unusual vehicle really for a British company to do. But yeah, fair play to Corgi for doing that one. Put that one over there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there was a field gun. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be any particular type of field gun. It's fairly well detailed. It obviously elevates. US Army sticker on the front, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's any kind of American gun or anything like that. Not really sure if it's supposed to be anything in particular, but it looks fairly realistic. I'm guessing with it having the US Army sticker on the front, this particular one is meant to go with the Jeep. So there we go. But yeah, we'll also attach to, let me get the right one, the Dingo. It sort of slots under there. It's a little bit fiddly. No, I'll leave it. I think it's a little bit awkward. But yeah, that's the field gun. I'll put that one there. Now, the next one is actually this one. This is one of the last ones that I ended up getting for the collection. I managed to find it in a second-hand shop whilst on holiday somewhere. It's the Sting military helicopter. So we'll get it off its packet. Now, this is where the range slightly, well, possibly with the exception of the field gun, I'm not sure that's a real field gun or not, but yeah, the range kind of deviates into kind of made-up vehicles. This is clearly a made-up helicopter. Corgi called it the Sting military helicopter. It's not bad. I'm guessing it's supposed to be like a Bell 47 type thing, like sort of MASH helicopters, as it's got that kind of bubble canopy, very simple construction, sort of two-person cockpit, exposed engine. And also, I'm assuming they're like the casualty litters that you'd have on the side for obviously holding a stretcher on each side. Not a bad little helicopter, really. The one poor thing about it is it's got no tail rotor, so in real life this wouldn't work at all. It would just spin round on the main rotor. But yeah, fragile, so it's probably a difficult one to pick up in perfect condition with those plastic skids, plastic rotors, and although it's metal, that tail is very thin. But yeah, that's the Sting military helicopter. Let's pop that over there. Now, I said no military collection is complete without a Jeep. Well, no military collection is certainly complete without a tank. Slightly unusual choice for Corgi, given that this wouldn't have been in service, or not in this sort of form anymore. It's the Centurion. By this point, the British Army would have been using the Chieftain, which was kind of the sort of successor to the Centurion. But the Centurion's a very well-known tank. Corgi also did one of these in their larger military vehicle range from the 70s. As typical of all kind of tracked vehicles in this sort of scale, it's just got plastic moulded tracks with sort of wheels underneath. It's not bad. You can't really expect it to have working tracks in this sort of scale. It's fairly simple, and again, biggest disappointment with it, it's clearly a Centurion. It's the black plastic turret. It would have been really nice if they could have, at least tried to get it the same colour as the rest of the tank, even giving it a metal turret. The barrel it's got a little bit of give to it, but again, it's not going to be the strongest. But yeah, so that's the Centurion tank. Oops, pop that there. Now, this next one is the second helicopter in the series, and again, it's a completely made up one, although it's pretty obvious what they were emulating here. Corgi just called it the Airbus. There was a civilian version of this in orange. I think that one might also have had red crosses on it. But yeah, clearly supposed to be a sort of a Chinook or Sea Knight type helicopter with the twin rotors. It's got very small undercarriage and quite fragile undercarriage. But, it's not a bad helicopter. It looks all right. The worst thing about it by far is the rivets on the side, which just look awful. Even an attempt to paint over them would have been better than that. But is what it is, I suppose. It's a fairly small casting. Rotors spin, obviously. But yeah, it's not bad. So yeah, that's the Airbus helicopter. And then the last one from the sort of normal range was only available as part of the gift set. Now, this is the gift set here, and there's an example of what was in it. So you got the ambulance, the Commando, the Jeep, the Sting, the Dingo, the field gun, and another repaint of a civilian vehicle, the Land Rover recovery truck. Surprisingly, not actually a terribly realistic vehicle for a military range. I don't think a military would kind of use this kind of thing. It's just not heavy enough for anything that might need recovering. But, it's not bad. At least it looks kind of plausible. But yeah, this was only available as part of the gift set. It was the only way to get it. But yeah, it's not bad. I think there was a few versions of this in the civilian lineup. I'm sure there was a metallic blue one. I'm sure I've seen a purple one. But yeah, this is the only military one. So that's the Land Rover Wrecker. And as you can see, also as part of the gift set, you got some little sets of soldiers. You got two that were specifically meant to go with the gun, one with a shell, and a couple obviously with guns, one throwing a grenade. Kind of limited by the fact that they were joined together on a single base, but there you go. So that's kind of it for the main sort of Corgi Juniors military range. A couple of other things that are worth mentioning is that in about 1976, they introduced the Super Juniors range. Now, these were kind of meant to be in between the Juniors and the sort of larger sized Corgi vehicles. And they had a range of kind of articulated trucks and things like that. One of which was this. It was known as the Armoured Car Transporter. And it actually came with the Commando. There we go. Another one that's fallen victim to doing it in US Army colours. It's a Ford D series, not a vehicle the Americans would ever have used, but it's quite nice. I'll just have a look at the cab there. Again, as I say, this is one that they produced in civilian colours. I'm not sure if the low loader version had anything on it in the civilian version, I can't remember. But yeah, certainly as a military one, they did it as an armoured car transport. See, it's got the white stars on the doors there. And then the trailer, we've got the ramp that goes down like that to let the armoured car off. This is the trailer, pretty standard, low loader, fairly basic, but you know, quite nice. So that's that. Now, the armoured car transporter would actually be one of the longest lived of the Corgi Juniors military range, not being deleted until 1980. Now, the other Corgi Super Juniors that's worth mentioning is this one, the Mack tanker truck. Again, obviously a repurposed civilian vehicle. The original version was an SO1. Now, this one, at least it is an American vehicle in US Army colours. It's a Mack R series, and it has the opening bonnet. Whether the US Army ever actually used these, I don't know. It's a very sort of British style tanker trailer, so, you know, but it's quite nice. It's certainly an appropriate sort of vehicle to do in military colours, certainly more appropriate than some others that have been done. So yeah, so that's the two from the Super Juniors range. Now, the military range, I think by the end of the 70s, most diecast companies were tending to be kind of quietly getting rid of their military range. Military toys seemed to have fallen out of favour by the end of the 70s. And certainly by the end of the 70s, the Corgi Juniors range had all gone from the catalogues. I'll just move this over there, and that's over there. However, in 1982, this was introduced. It was called the Commando set, and it's kind of a exercise in repurposing things, I guess you'd say. Corgi did some plastic buildings as part of there was a Wild West set. There was like a stagecoach and horses and like an American West style locomotive and carrier that you could get. And as you can see, these look very much like sort of Western sort of themed buildings with the boardwalk here. And that's what these originally would have been. Let's get the other one out. So the other one that's still attached to the packet. Well, yeah, you can see, you know, it kind of looks very much like a sort of saloon. And they've decided to repurpose it as in this case, US Army Hospital with emergency building next to it. And in this case, a nicely labelled command post and communications. Not very convincing, I'll be totally honest with you. But the main reason I wanted this set is because it came with a long wheelbase Jeep. And again, this was the only way to get it. Also, you got your Commando, which really only has a sticker on one side in this one, but never mind. Oops. And you also got the Centurion tank. So yeah, that's the Commando set. I'll just pop that to one side. And then, yeah, like I say, after kind of that, military vehicles kind of drop out of the Corgi range for a little bit. Now, the long wheelbase Jeep that I've just mentioned did make a reappearance in the civilian lineup. And then they gave it sort of larger size wheels, and there were two larger size wheel version Jeeps that actually they did in military colours. First one was this one, done as an ambulance Jeep. Now this is one I've actually had since I was little. It was bought sometime in probably the late 80s. As far as military vehicles go, it's obviously not very realistic at all, but it appealed to me when I was little. The top does come off. There you go. Yeah, I just liked it, and it's one thankfully I've looked after and had it. So as I say, I've had it for well over 30 years now. So there we go. So there's that one, and then the other one was done in kind of a far more generic US Army markings. Although I will point out the Invasion Star is really meant just for World War II vehicles, so it's not really appropriate for this. But there you go. This one actually I found quite difficult to find. Eventually sort of picked one up in a charity shop of all places after looking on eBay and things like that. They are about, but they were just kind of far more than I was willing to pay for them. So, yeah, eventually managed to pick one up. Thankfully, it's in good condition. Managed to get a top for it off another Jeep as well. This is the right colour top for it. It is darker than the previous one. So, yeah, so they did the two kind of big wheel Jeeps. And then that was it. Everything kind of went really quiet then. There were kind of no more military vehicles introduced at all. And then in 1989, Corgi was taken over by Mattel, and they rebranded Corgi Juniors as Auto City. Now, they weren't really big advocates of the Auto City ranges because Mattel also owned Hot Wheels. They were kind of obviously a direct competitor to them. So The Auto City range, as it was, I say, now known as, didn't really have any new moulds introduced. They kind of just carried on reproducing, new versions of vehicles that they already did. Of course, moulds that were getting increasingly old, and vehicles that you wouldn't really have been seeing on the roads anymore. However, in 1995, they decided to bring out a whole new military set. Now, it's a bit of an oddball set, I'll be totally honest, and it was only available as a gift set. You couldn't get these vehicles individually. And it kind of consists of, well, they're all rehashes really, with one kind of new vehicle. But it's a bit bizarre. So the first one, here we go. So they're all done in this kind of weird NATO colour scheme. Now, NATO, obviously, North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, all sort of Western European countries, the US, Canada are members, but no vehicles are actually marked up as NATO vehicles. So it's a bit of an odd choice for Corgi. I'm guessing in the mid-90s, NATO was in the news with would have been the Yugoslav Civil War at the time, and NATO carrying out airstrikes and that. But yeah, a bit of a random choice. And obviously the vehicles, we got a 1950s era Centurion tank in what was supposedly modern NATO colours. Again, unfortunately with the black plastic turret. Yeah, not terribly convincing, but there we go. Even less convincing, the Daimler Dingo Scout car was rehashed. The only difference, apart from the colour scheme, was that the figure, still with his Bren gun, is now in black. Slightly different wheels, but again, the decent looking wheels. And this time, this one does have the tow bar, because this was the only vehicle that could tow the relaunched field gun, again with its NATO badge. And it does, there we go, clip underneath there. There we go, that's the NATO Daimler Dingo. They also reintroduced the Sting military helicopter, the nice NATO logo on the front of the cockpit, looking a bit like a target, to be honest. There you go, that's that. And again, they reintroduced, I should say, the Airbus, which is there. Again, with the slightly less bad than on the original version with the rivets, but they're still fairly prominent. But yeah, it's not terrible. So that's that. And then the only other two vehicles he did, there was which were kind of available as well as being in the main gift set. They were also available as a twin pack, and that's this. So you can see there's a new version of the large wheel Jeep with a nice big NATO logo on the front of it. And then the other one is this Kenworth flatbed truck. Now, this was from a new range that had been introduced in sort of 89, 90, called Truckers. This is just another example of a vehicle from the lineup. So there were basically, I think, 3 different vehicles they did. They did a Kenworth, which they did as a box truck and a tanker, and possibly a tipper truck. Then there was a Ford Cargo, and also an MAN. I only ever had this one. I liked American trucks, so I picked this one up on holiday one year. So this is another one I've had since I was little. But yeah, it was decided to bring out a flatbed truck with a nice big NATO logo on the flatbed. Now, one of the exhaust pipes has snapped off in the packet. There it is, just rattling around in the back. So at some point I will get this out and I will fix it. But yeah, I'll leave them in the packet for now. But yeah, that's the Auto City NATO military range. And I don't think they were out for long. I think they were kind of been quietly dropped after that. And then that was kind of the end of Corgi Juniors military. So, it's quite a nice range. Some simple ones, some dubious ones. But generally all are kind of decent military vehicles. A couple of little exceptions, as I say. But compared to the Matchbox range, there was a lot more kind of civilian repaints in that one, repaints of like civilian type vehicles. So at least in this range, however inappropriate some of the vehicles might have been, like that, they are all sort of generally military type vehicles. So that's that. Now, I say all went quiet at that point. Certainly Corgi Juniors, Auto City, whatever you want to call them, were kind of no longer produced. However, in 2012, Corgi did announce a whole brand new range of sort of small size vehicles. And surprisingly, there was a new 5-pack. Now what I'm going to do is, because this video has gone on for long enough, I'll end this one here, And in my next video, I'll do a quick review of that. So yeah, so there we go. The Corgi Juniors military range. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.